Hey there, and welcome to the Leadership Strengths and Values assignment that takes what we call an experiential approach to helping you figure out what your crystal clear top 5 values and top 5 strengths are that will give you some confidence in knowing what really is important to you and what strengths, what skills that you have you can really rely on and know you can contribute to and build upon. What we're going to look at is the overall structure of the assignment, which is broken down into two main parts, and then look in more depth at the interview process which starts this off, because this is incredibly important. You'll be working with another person in partnership to help each other understand a couple of really important experiences for you and what they can teach you about your values and strengths. And then the second part, which looks at some personal work you'll be doing, some reflective work, as well as some discussion with 3 people that you know to gather some other feedback that you can use to really see the consistency and specificity of what your strengths and values are. The first thing I want to point you to are 3 lists of feelings, strengths, and values. These are idea generators. They're certainly not absolutely comprehensive. I'm sure there are feelings and strengths and values out there that we haven't noted. But what this is for is not so much that you pick from this list necessarily, although you certainly can, and many people have. This is really about helping you exhaust your mind. In other words, getting all the ideas out there that you can. And this will come up at times where you can refer to these. So we have the feelings possibilities list. This is right at the beginning of the document. You also have the strengths possibilities list. And you can see they're all alphabetical, and you scroll through them all. And then you also have the values possibilities list. And like I said, these are here to help clarify perhaps what your specific strength or value or feeling is that is being discussed. It may give you an idea for another language you want to use, another word you want to use, anything at all. So that's right up front, and make sure you have that available to you so that you are not feeling stuck, and this will help give you some ideas. The first big section here is what we call the peak experience interviews. These are done in a very specific way in a partnership situation that you're going to experience, where you interview somebody, first of all, and you gather information for them, and they will eventually do the same for you. We're going to come back to that in a moment. The other main section is what I've simply titled Clarifying Our Values and Strengths. This is where you pull forward the information from the interview process you've completed and now do more individually reflective work. And in conjunction with that, speak to 3 other people and get their feedback on what they feel your strengths and values are based on their experience. Remember, these are strengths and values about your leadership. So you may have had limited experience, and that's fine. It doesn't really matter. What we're looking for is some touch bases with 3 other people, as well as your own reflection on what you see coming up over and over again, because strengths and values show up in patterns of experience that shouldn't be much of a surprise to you. What we're trying to do is ultra clarify what they are so you can move forward with confidence. So here we are at the first section again, looking at our peak experiences and understanding what I call your constructive core. And at our constructive core, one aspect of that are your strengths, another aspect are your values. And so what we're doing here is taking what we call an appreciative approach, and this, for those of you who may have some interest in this, this is based on some of the ideas in appreciative inquiry, which is a well-known change methodology. But what we're looking to do here is this, is to have a very in-depth, very focused interview in pairs. And so what we'll do is have one person, you can call yourself person A, and your partner would be person B. You would sit down, and over a period of maybe 20-25 minutes, person A, let's say that's you, would interview your partner B. And what you'll do is go through all of the questions and explore 2 leadership experiences in depth and really extract the learning from them so you know really what makes you tick in an optimal way. And it's very important, by the way, that you take the time and be patient with this. One very important guideline is that when you are interviewing, you are taking notes for your partner. In other words, you're exploring their experiences with them and prompting them to go further, and you're taking notes about every single thing they say. Do not edit anything. That is incredibly important. Don't edit. Don't make assumptions that something means something that you think it means when it may not. Always check things out with your partner as they're sharing stuff with you. Your job is to write down everything they say, period. When the time comes for you to be interviewed, so in other words, you complete all the questions, which we're going to go through in a moment, and your partner B now is interviewing you, you put all of this away, so you're not reading the questions along or assuming that you understand it all. Being interviewed is a very different experience than being the one who interviews. So maybe you've heard the questions before or whatever and you think that you understand it all. Don't shortchange yourself because you'll be off base. This has been done. I've done this personally with at least a couple of thousand people over the years, and I can tell you that it can elicit incredible insight if you do it properly. And shortchanging it just is a disservice to your partner. So remember, you're taking notes for them, but now as you have done all that, they're going to do the same for you. Let yourself be interviewed. This is a very positive, uplifting thing, and give yourself the space to enjoy the process. So they're going to go through the same thing, which I'm going to walk through with you in a moment, and you're going to respond. You want to make sure you keep the questions away. Don't read along because that's distracting. That's the left brain wanting to control everything. Just let yourself be interviewed and don't interrupt the process by wanting to even shortchange the information you give. Okay, so give them everything and they're going to be responsible for writing down everything for you the way you did for them. So let's look at what those questions are. Now the questions are going to be more or less the same for the two experiences, except for one part which I'll explain to you in a moment. As we begin, we have something here called the lead-in. And as an interviewer, it is very, very important that you read this lead-in. This lead-in is very important to set up the first question. So you as person A, if you've completed the first interview with your partner, it doesn't matter that you may have the awareness of where the questions are coming from. Let your partner read the lead-in first and the complete first question and listen. And it will give you the freedom to really dive into the experience that comes up from within you that is the one you need to pay attention to. One little footnote about experiences. We often come into these things thinking an experience has to be big to be valuable. An experience being big or small is a false judgment because sometimes our biggest experiences aren't really that impactful, what we think is a big experience. What we need to look at is what experience is arising within us that we feel is significant. Let it arise from within. It may come from a part of your memory you completely forgot about, or it's something you think, why is this coming up? Don't judge it. Just trust that it's your own intuition that's delivering that to you. So let's read the lead-in paragraph. In our work and personal lives, we have had experiences of leadership that are optimal. Those experiences where everything comes together harmoniously with our values and strengths, and where we feel we are contributing and serving fully. This is similar whether we are the one leading or we are following a leader we value and respect. The result can be the experience of effortlessness, ease, and joy, and the sense that we are completely aligned with what we are doing and how we are living. So that's the lead-in paragraph. So what you want to do is read this paragraph and go right into the first question. Think of a time in your work life, either professional or volunteer, where the leadership situation or circumstance was optimal, an experience or moment of leading or being led that is memorable and constructive. You were able to offer yourself fully from your heart in support to those who were present and the work you were doing. Please provide as much detail as possible. Okay, we stop there. The writing in blue below is kind of a little prompt for the interviewer. So if you're asking the questions, you're A and you're asking your partner B. As A, this is just something here for you that if you feel you need to remind your partner, you can. Don't necessarily say it right away. Wait and see if they're maybe feeling a little bit stuck, which is very normal. Sometimes we have to wait half a minute, 2 minutes even, for people to come up with something. Let the space be there. Just let it be like this potential, and don't get stressed because it's taking the person time. There you might feel stressed they're not coming up with something. We can be very self-judgmental about this. So allow it to occur, wait, and then see if you need to say it. In the prompt it says, please note that it is not necessary that the experience be big. It may have simply been a moment in time or a seemingly small contribution. What matters is that it is an important and memorable experience for you. I really recommend you don't read something like that literally, like word for word, but just keep that in mind that it doesn't have to be a big experience. And when we're talking about an experience, focus on a meeting, an hour, a very short period of time, a day at the most. If you go back and think, well, 3 months last summer I had a good time having this job, that's too broad and it won't provide the depth that you need to deliver the real insight that you want. Really focus on a point in time. I had a conversation with my boss for 10 minutes that really inspired me, blah, blah, blah. Or I was supervising somebody, I was really nervous about talking to them about something I want them to do differently, and we had this really interesting conversation. It went on for about an hour, but what I found was blah, 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 and you learned something from that. Keep it to an hour or two at the most, if at all possible. And as an interviewer, it's important for you to help focus them if your partner B is getting a little bit sidetracked. One thing that happens, it's rare, but one thing that might come up is the person will say, I can't think of anything that's a positive experience. Lighten the load, there is one in there somewhere. The problem is they're looking for, again, probably a big experience that seems significant to them, but the problem is, again, significant experiences and big experiences are not necessarily the same thing. When we focus on a moment in time, just give them the space, and if they get stuck, then you can ask for help. But for the most part, if someone is coming up with something and it's negative, well, I didn't have any good experiences, but I had one negative one I learned from. No, stop them and let them find one, because you won't learn as much if you feel bad about the circumstance. Often the thing is we want to forget about it. Sometimes a difficult experience has a positive outcome. In other words, a difficult experience is not necessarily a bad one. Sometimes we have to have difficult conversations with the people we lead, or someone's had to have a difficult conversation with us. But somehow the way it started, although it felt not great, it actually ended up working really well, and maybe it turned into a more positive feeling experience given the circumstance, and that's okay. So that gives you a sense of how to set up the first question. As we scroll down, we get to the second question. Before we cover this off, I just want to make note, as the interviewer, your job is to take notes as effectively as possible. You're going to do this by hand, and you're going to write, and if you need more time to write, that's fine. We're not used to always handwriting the way we used to. It's very important, though, that you pay attention, you write this in by hand, and you can stop the person and say, just hold on a moment, let me make sure I capture everything, because you want to capture everything they say here. Okay, so you just write in your own writing, doesn't matter, it doesn't have to be great handwriting. Mine is terrible, I don't care. We're just going to get through it. So you just write it all in here like this, and you fill in the space. And if you run out of space, you can run down the side, doesn't matter. And if it really gets big, you can go to the back of a page. But for the most part, there should be enough space for you to get most of the information, if not all of it there. Okay, so let's look at question 2 now. Question 2 asks, what was it about the experience that was so impactful for you? What feelings came up during the experience when it happened, and what feelings came up during the experience when it happened, and what feelings come up now as you reflect on it? These two questions are going a little bit further with the experience. So once you have all the detail about the experience itself, some of this information might have already been articulated, and that's okay, that's normal. But you want to re-clarify. So what was it about the experience that was so impactful for you? Definitely want to know. So what does that mean? In other words, you want to understand, well, why is this such an important experience for you, do you think? And your partner may not have the answers right away, or if you're being interviewed, you might not have the answers right away. Just give it a half a minute or a minute to kind of get to it. And one of the things that's important here is to write down the feelings that came up during the experience to the best of your memory, and any feelings that are coming up now as you reflect on it. It may be months, even years later. And so make sure, though, that if you feel a little bit stuck, go back to the feelings list that's provided to jog some of your memory, and maybe that'll help you kind of figure out specifically what some of the feelings were. And again, as the person who is taking the notes, as the interviewer, you're writing down all the answers here. Make sure you get all the information, and don't make assumptions that you understand what the person means. If something isn't crystal clear, just say, oh, I noticed you said you felt sad. Can you say a little bit more about that? What do you mean you felt sad? And the person might go, well, you know, whatever, and they'll start to explain it and capture all of that. The next 3 questions are very straightforward. So, much like question 2, You want to know another aspect of this experience, which is, what did you do to make the experience happen? What strengths did you demonstrate? Our strengths you can think of as the skills that we feel the most confident and comfortable utilizing. By utilizing them, these are the things we did to make the experience happen. So what strengths did you demonstrate? So certainly refer to the strengths list provided if that's helpful. I really encourage it. And write down as many strengths as you feel are applicable here. What's really important is when we use a list, we have to be careful that we don't pick from the beginning of the alphabet and just stop. Encourage the person, if they're using a list and your respondent, the person you're interviewing, is allowed to have these lists in front of them, is to scan it. Don't start with A, B, and C sections and just give up. Allow the person, and if you're the one responding, allow yourself to scan the whole list and allow the ones that stand out to really pop and choose those. Next question. Who else was involved? Who else contributed to the experience, and what did they do? This is just something where you're trying to see if you're leading somebody or leading a group, or you're part of a group that's being led by somebody that you find is giving you a great experience in this case. What are they doing? You don't have to be concerned about using the strengths list and all that. This is simply to look for behaviors. What did they do? Did they talk to you in a certain way? Did they provide a certain structure, support? What was going on? What did they do? So if you're leading others, one thing for sure is the other people were there. Were they listening, participating, asking questions? What did they do? So just identify who was involved directly with the experience and what they did to help contribute, because that'll help you understand context. What kind of people do I need to have around me, and what do I need them to be doing to be able to have an optimal leadership experience? And then the last key question is, what values were present that made this experience important to you? And this is another case where you can go back and use a list. And the values list, again, it's not absolutely complete, but it's a pretty broad range of values that you can tap into. And you don't have to be too concerned about the specific meaning of a value. It's what it means to you that counts. And you're going to see later on when you flesh all this stuff out that you're going to be able to define it very specifically based on what your interpretation of it is, and that's completely fine. What were the values that were present? As the interviewer, write them all down, and you don't have to do big definitions around them, just get them all down. Same thing with the strengths, just list them off and then we'll come back to them later on. So that's the end of interviewing the first peak experience. As we scroll down, you can see we move into experience 2. Now we get into experience 2, more or less everything is the same. We don't use the lead-in anymore because we're already in the middle of it. We know what we're looking for. But we go into the second experience starting with a very similar question as we did at the very beginning. Think of an additional time in your work life, either professional or volunteer, where the leadership situation or circumstance was optimal, an experience or moment of leading or being led that is memorable and constructive. You were able to offer yourself fully from your heart in support to those who were present and the work you were doing. Please provide as much detail as possible. So once again, you're the interviewer and you're just taking all these notes, writing everything down here just like you did at the beginning. Don't be concerned about editing, please. Don't assume that you understand everything. Just get it all down and that'll be that. And then we keep going through very similar questions. In fact, they're identical questions as we go along, and you'll see it's the same thing to the end of question 10, and that section is basically done. Now once you've done the 10 questions as the interviewer, so again, person A interviewing person B, what you have to do for your partner is this. You want to go through and review the responses from 1 to 10 briefly. You're just going to share what you have for each one, and you're doing a double check. This is very important. What it looks like is we go back to the first question, and you will have written down all kinds of information here, right? Because you're a great interviewer and you captured everything. And all you're going to do is read everything back to them. Don't worry about having it perfect. That's not the point. The point is to be clear and complete. So don't worry about perfect language or something. But again, because you haven't edited it, this will give them great feedback and they'll hear their own thoughts coming back to them, and it may jog some other detail. Wait for it. Same thing's going to happen with all of the other questions. You're going to go through all of them and it won't take long, I promise. It's usually just a few minutes to review them all, and that will help really solidify the whole thing. End to end, this thing will probably take anywhere from 20 to 30 minutes at the most. Don't rush it. Make sure you really focus on helping your partner, and they will in turn focus on helping you. This is all about your life as a leader, so don't shortcut it. It's not worth it. It doesn't serve you, and those little details matter. So here we are at the end of the 10 questions. So this is the partnership part that is now complete. In our class situation, you will be stopping and then switching roles. What you do later on is more self-reflective. As we go down here, there's one more key question, which is this, and this is something you'll do on your own. Reflection on your 2 peak experiences. Now is the time to reflect on what you have shared above. With an easeful heart and quiet eyes, review what you have recorded. What themes emerge from the experiences and details you have discussed? You can note them below. It could be helpful to draw a picture of what comes up as you reflect on your 2 experiences and the themes you discover. Please be sure to allow your whole being to review and absorb what you have written down for your 2 experiences. Drawing a picture is an important option that many people find helpful to get to the heart of what is important for them. So this is really a personal reflection section. You've got lots of space here. If you want to draw a picture, you can do that too. And then we get to the peak experience summary, and this is simply summarizing what your responses have been during the interview process. So at the end of the partnership piece, you have your own information back from your partner. So your partner has written down all the stuff for you. You take it back and you reflect on question 11, and then you do the peak experience summary. And here you write down your demonstrated values. And these are the values that showed up in your experiences, your demonstrated strengths, your demonstrated feelings, and any contributions by other people. So just note down the kinds of things that have come up. Don't edit, and any other additional learning or insight that's come up as you do this. We'll stop this tutorial here, and this will be the end of the first half, and there will be another one prepared for the other part of the process.